My cousin slept with my wife and made me raise his child for 15 years. I was 18 when I met my ex Marisol. During that time, I was a gangbanger with the Latin Kings. Marisol was a church girl. My grandmother dragged me to Sunday Mass, and when I saw her, it was love at first sight. I asked my cousin, who was a friend of hers, if he could introduce us, but he refused. He didn't want me to mess with her. He didn't want me to ruin her. I wanted to be better for her. When I found out that she was going to church almost every day, I hung out by the steps, talking to her. I always walked her to and from church. She made me feel like I wasn't worthless. One thing led to another and we were dating and I felt great. For a year and a half I pushed myself away from the gang life, got my GED, became a regular churchgoer and was thinking about the future when I got unintentionally pulled back in. I was at a store and ran into someone that I used to have problems with. They were running their mouths and I tried to ignore it, I swear I did. I just let them talk and I walked away, but then I got jabbed with a pencil in the shoulder blade and I lost my mind. I wailed on him. I got arrested and suddenly it was like the stuff I did to make my life better vanished. Marisol was mad at me, my grandmother kept bringing up my past mistakes and my cousin was telling me that he knew that I wasn't going to change. My public defender saw me trying to better myself and by the grace of God, got me off after a month in lockup. Despite being angry with me, Marisol did visit me almost daily. After I got out, I found out I was going to be a father and I didn't want my kid to have a dad that was dead or in jail. We eloped, I went to a trade school to become a mechanic and I busted my butt for my future family. When my baby Luna was born, it was almost the worst day of my life. Marisol wouldn't stop bleeding. She went into shock. She was in the hospital for months and Luna became my world. I wanted her life to be the best, I wanted to give her the world. When Marisol was released, I promised her that our daughter will have a life far better than ours and for years I kept that promise. I saved enough money to move us to the suburbs, became homeowners, I was a Girl Scout leader. I made sure Luna went to private school, made sure she knew how to defend herself and always made sure I was the perfect husband. I didn't know my parents. Didn't have a positive male role model in my life, so I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. As the years went by I owned my own garage, my cousin became a pastor, my grandmother was still a pain in my butt, my relationship with my wife was stronger than ever, I made sure I kept my prison body, but my daughter Luna hated me. Since she turned 13 she just started hating me. She didn't want me to hug her. Rolled her eyes every time I told her I loved her. Ignored me when I asked her about her day in school. It hurt me and Marisol saw it. She told me that she's a teenager and that I should just let it ride. She will come back to me. For 2 years it was like that. So for her quinceañera, I wanted to go all out. Got everything she wanted and she was still disrespectful and briefly the old me almost came out just to put her in her place, but instead, I went to my cousin, vented my frustration and doubts about being a good father and he told me to just let her be and he said a prayer for me. I wanted a slideshow for the father-daughter dance. I got a chunk of the pictures of us together, but I realized I didn't have any recent pictures of us. She didn't want to take any. The last time I had pictures of her and I smiling with me was on her 13th birthday and those were on my daughter's broken tablet. I took that tablet, went to a repair shop and I didn't care about the cost. I needed that tablet fixed. After a day and $300. The tech fixed it and I was happy. I knew her passcode, but I never bothered invading her privacy. I just wanted those pictures and when I opened that tablet and looked in the gallery, there they were. My little girl, smiling and happy to be with me. I felt great. Then the instant messages appeared. It was my daughter talking to my wife. It was a long banter that she didn't want me to dance with her and it did hurt, but like my wife said, she's being a teenager. Then she said something that destroyed me. She texted why she had to do the father-daughter dance with me since I'm not her father. I felt my heart stop. My wife responded that I raised her, I loved her, and that makes me her father. But Luna responded by saying that my cousin is her father and she can't wait for her to turn 18 so she could tell me the truth and she could live with her real dad. That she hated me, that she thanked God that I'm not her father. Marisol began cursing her out. Saying that it was a mistake for my cousin to tell her the truth 2 years ago and the more they talked, the angrier I got. My wife lied to me for 15 years. My cousin whom I confide my issues about Luna and my fears about being a bad father not only effed my wife, but had me raise his child. I wanted to hurt them. I went to a dark place so I wouldn't do anything stupid. I told Marisol that I needed to focus on work so I could pay the quints and instead I drove to Manhattan and saw my old public defender who wasn't a low-level attorney anymore. He had a nice expensive firm near Midtown East. I was surprised that he remembered me, but apparently, I was his first case as a public defender. We sat down and I told him everything. Gave him the tablet and when he turned it on, the messages just kept coming. Only this time, Luna was talking to my cousin, her real father, and he was telling her to give me a chance. How I was always there for her, but Luna told him that so was he. How it makes sense that they have so much in common and even called him Poppy multiple times in their conversation and he responded and told her that she was his little girl. We went through our options and he asked me what I want to do. And I told him that I wanted to go full scorched earth. I wanted to poison the well and he asked me several times if that is what I wanted and I nodded. I also told him that everything had to be filed before the quints in 2 weeks. So we sat down and spent the next 12 hours on what needed to be done. I secretly placed my business for sale. Called the private school and told them that I will not be paying for next year. Closed the college accounts, and the savings that I had for Luna and prepared to place my house for sale online. No one was the wiser. I followed his instructions perfectly. There was only one thing I deviated from. The day of the quints. That day went off without a hitch. The whole family was there. Luna was smiling, having fun. Marisol kept asking me if I was okay and I lied to her. It was hard lying to her. From the moment I met her, I never lied to her and during those 2 weeks, every time, I kissed her, held her, made love to her. It was hard not to scream at her. It was hard not to hate her. When it was time for the father-daughter dance, I called her to the center of the stage. She looked annoyed, but walked over. I had the music playing and she smiled and it tore me apart, seeing her smiling at me. For years I wanted to see that smile again and now I didn't want it. As we danced, I had the slideshow playing. Pictures of the two of us and towards the end of the song, screenshots of her text messages with her mother and real father. Needless to say this didn't bode too well. Mary Soul looked like she saw a ghost, Luna just kept staring at the large screen and my cousin just stared at me with fear. Mary Soul ran to me and told me that she could explain and I told her that I filed for a divorce. That she could explain it in court. She grabbed my arm, begging me and I pulled back. I told Luna that I busted my butt to give the world, and now she doesn't deserve it. I began to walk out, but not before telling my cousin that every time I see him, I'm going to knock him out. Then I knocked him out. The aftermath was harsh. Mary Soul and Luna were at my grandmother's apartment. Her family was shocked and disgusted with her, they wanted nothing to do with her. Her father actually apologized to me. My grandmother had the audacity to tell me about the story Abraham and how when came back from battle 3 years later, his wife had a 1-year-old child and he raised him as his own and how I should be like Abraham, so I told her to get the F out of my house. Mary Soul came a few days later, crying as soon as she saw me, telling me that it was an accident. That when I was arrested she was so angry at me and my cousin was there to console her and one thing led to another and they had intimacy. It happened only one time and she was faithful to me ever since. She was willing to take a lie detector test to prove it. So I asked her how long she knew Luna wasn't mine and she started crying more. That look she gave me just told me that she knew from day one and asked her to leave. She wanted to go to counseling, telling me that I'm overreacting and we could make it work. It was in the past and I needed to get over it. That I am Luna's father, despite what happened and I allowed my temper to get the best of me. I must have repeated get over it? Over a dozen times at full volume while grabbing her stuff and tossing it out the door. I told her that I didn't want to see her effing face ever again, and I told her that this life that I built, no longer belongs to her before shoving her out the door.